When I scattered Susan's ashes into the sea, my brother realized that he hadn't seen Susan for a long time. He came over and casually asked, "Where has that drama queen Susan run off to this time?" I smiled and said, "She's dead, you'll never see her again." Unexpectedly, my brother responded, "It would be good if she's really dead. I just hope she doesn't come back to haunt us." I was curious to see the look on his face when he found out Susan was indeed dead, at the New Year's gathering. Susan wore a red mink velvet sweater that made her face glow radiantly. She came over, hugged my waist, and whispered in a tender, mushy voice, "Nina, do you think I should confess to Levin when he arrives?" I pinched her cheek playfully and teased, "Aren't you embarrassed, wanting to become my sister-in-law just like that?" Susan blushed from her cheeks to her earlobes and exclaimed, "Nina." I quickly soothed her, "Hee, sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, I want you to be my sister-in-law. And so does my brother who wants to marry you." She then relaxed her hands, which she had jokingly raised to my neck, and sat down properly. My parents told Susan to start eating first. "Susan, you have a sensitive stomach, eat first, don't wait for Levin, he'll be here soon." Susan waved her hand, "No worries, I'm not hungry, I'll wait and eat with Levin." Just as she finished speaking, Levin's voice entered, "Happy New Year, family." He was dressed in a white down jacket, and beneath his jet-black hair were his charming, love-filled eyes. Susan got up cheerfully and walked towards him. "Levin, is it cold outside?" Her words stopped abruptly as Levin walked in with another girl. From the moment Levin and Sarah sat down, the smiles vanished from the faces of my family. I saw Susan turn pale with panic. Several times she seemed to want to get up and leave, but fear of attracting too much attention kept her firmly in her seat, at the dinner table. Only my brother was talking. "Mom and Dad, today I officially brought Sarah over to meet the family. Sarah, you've met my sister Nina," and sitting next to her, "Susan, you're not unfamiliar with her, are you?" Upon hearing Susan's name, Sarah's lips curled into a mocking smile. An unspoken understanding passed between her and my brother. My mother looked worriedly at Susan, unable to bear it any longer. I grabbed Susan's hand, ready to leave, but then Sarah, who hadn't spoken since entering, finally spoke. "Levin, I haven't agreed to be with you yet, so there's no need for such formality. Uncle and aunt, and you, the so-called sister, what's your name?" "Susan, you treat her like a sister, but she might not want to acknowledge you as a brother, or perhaps, just a lover." After Sarah finished speaking, she scoffed and stood up to leave. Levin's expression turned stiff, and he glanced coldly at Susan. "Susan, haven't we settled our debts with you yet? Why do you linger like a restless spirit? What more do you want? Also, Sarah is the person I love. No one else's opinion matters." Holding Sarah's hand, afraid she might walk out first, he stood up and added towards Susan, "I appreciate straightforward and honest characters. She doesn't like to feign innocence or play the victim. That bad woman." My father grumbled as he stood up and walked over with a chair. "Levin, act like an adult, will you? Can't you grow up?" My mother held him back and sighed deeply, turning to my brother, "Then leave, if you're so determined, and don't come back." My brother scoffed coldly, showing no signs of attachment, and walked away. Throughout the entire ordeal, Susan didn't say a word, yet she was inexplicably labeled the bad woman. My mom approached, took Susan's hand, and pulled her into an embrace. "Child, I'm sorry, your godparents have failed. We didn't raise our son right." Susan didn't move. I held her hand and suddenly felt a drop of moisture. Looking down, I saw her tears fall silently, her shoulders trembling slightly with restraint. Such a kind and tender-hearted girl, slandered by my brother. My anger was palpable as I wrapped my arm around her shoulder. "Susan, let's not like him anymore, okay? Forget about him." It was Levin who had provoked Susan first. After all, Susan grew up with us in the same large courtyard. Back then, she was a carefree, happy child with her parents still alive. Growing up, Susan was so beautiful that she attracted more attention than most. Levin, who was 2 years older than me and neither slim nor handsome, was even disliked by me, his own sister. Naturally, Susan didn't like Levin either. Despite her young age, she had a keen eye for who was attractive and who was not, yet Levin always enjoyed teasing her. He would make sweet Susan cry and scream out loud, "I never want to see Levin again, he's horrible. I won't talk to him anymore." Back then, Levin acted almost obsessed. Whenever Susan disliked him, he would go out of his way to appease her, only to upset her again once she calmed down. Our parents were exasperated. My dad would take a switch and spank Levin. "I'll teach you to stop bullying Susan." Susan and I stood by, secretly sharing a handful of sunflower seeds, watching Levin's pained expressions and giggling with delight. But that didn't solve the underlying issue. A few days after Levin's punishment, he was back to teasing Susan. Eventually, Susan started avoiding him, and I lost sight of her too. Our families were at a loss, Levin and Susan, truly a pair of bickering foes. As they grew older, Levin's looks unexpectedly improved. His features became distinct, turning heads even of passers-by, until that incident during our middle school years when my mom and Susan's mom had gone shopping and hadn't returned even past dinner time. Then my dad received a call from my mom, followed shortly by a call to Susan's dad from the police. That day, everyone was stunned. Susan never got to see her mother again. My mother and Susan's mother were caught in a riot where a thug wielding a long knife was attacking people indiscriminately. Susan's mother could have escaped, but she turned back to help my mother, who had fallen to the ground. In doing so, she was fatally stabbed by the assailant, with her last breath. Susan's mother shielded my mother, giving her a chance to survive. That day, aside from my mother, everyone nearby who didn't escape lost their lives. Susan's father was expressionless, his face wooden, moving like a zombie. Susan cried her heart out beside him, but he was oblivious. At night, my mother would hold me tightly in her sleep, trembling and muffling her sobs, clutching me close. "Nina, Susan has lost her mother, and it breaks my heart. I wish it had been me instead." I was 14 years old then, and hearing my mother say that Susan had lost her mother was heart-wrenchingly painful. I couldn't imagine how a child could go on without her mother. I vowed to be kind to Susan and to give her all the maternal love she was missing, in any way I could. Susan was devastated. She looked lost, her eyes constantly red, as if she were a rabbit. She often wore dirty white sneakers and didn't even notice her clothes were soiled. She stopped caring about her neat bun, which her father eventually replaced with a short haircut at the barber shop. It wasn't that she couldn't comb her hair herself. She told me, "Nina, every time I comb my hair in front of the mirror, I see my mother watching me with such a tender and compassionate gaze. Nina, I can't stand that look. I really miss my mom. She had been a princess, adored by her parents, but now, having lost her mother, everything had changed." At that time, Levin became Susan's constant companion, always following her, fearing she might come to harm. He stuck by her side for 2 years. My dad joked with Susan's father to lighten the mood, saying, "Levin acts as if Susan was his little wife." It was during high school, a time of budding emotions. At that comment, Levin's ears turned bright red, and Susan blushed, too shy to look up. But the good times didn't last. On an ordinary afternoon, Susan's father couldn't cope with the loss of his wife. After drinking with my dad, he left a note and jumped from a building. His note said, "Susan is well-behaved and sensible. She's easy to take care of. Please look after her." My dad, thinking it was just another joke about Levin and Susan, didn't realize the depth of adult emotions. Overwhelmed by the separation from his beloved, Susan's father ultimately gave up on the life he had built with his love, choosing to leave Susan behind and follow her mother. Susan became an orphan. From a mischievous doll, she turned into a sensitive and socially anxious young girl. At that time, my father decided to rent out Susan's family home. We then took Susan into our house. We used to live together and got along so well, but things changed after she came to stay with us. She became quiet, sensitive, and suspicious. My mom advised us privately to pay more attention to Susan's feelings. Levin, ever the problem solver, took charge and meticulously arranged everything for Susan, making sure she didn't have to lift a finger, almost to the point of feeding her himself. However, over time, Susan began crying inexplicably. She would scream in her dreams at night, waking everyone in the house. Initially, my parents suspected Levin was to blame. "Levin, have you been bullying Susan? Apologize to her," they said, but Levin, completely devoted to Susan, dismissed their concerns with hurried assurances. Yes, it's all my fault. I won't let her cry again. Don't worry." The next day, he took her to see a psychologist to find out what was wrong and why she was crying without reason. My parents eventually trusted Levin completely with Susan, and I felt like a third wheel, making myself scarce to give them space to further their relationship. It wasn't until my senior year of high school that my dad found a love letter in Levin's backpack. He punished Levin just as he had when he was a child, with a willow switch. Don't you know you're in your final year of high school? Don't you want to go to college? And why are you accepting love letters from someone else? Have you stopped caring about Susan? Levin's cheeks flushed as he scanned Susan frantically, begging my dad in a low voice. Dad, I didn't agree to it. I'm not in a relationship, honestly. Someone just put it in my backpack. I didn't know about it. Susan stood there awkwardly, her lonely expression revealing her feelings before she silently turned and walked away. That's when my dad's emotions broke through, his voice and demeanor filled with pain. Susan's mother died saving your mother. Her father could have lived too, but I failed to catch the undertones in his words. To calm and control his emotions in time, I could have saved him. Levin, please, treat Susan well. The guilt and sorrow in my parents' voices were beyond anyone's understanding, but Levin and I knew we had to treat Susan well. My mom repeatedly confirmed with Levin, if you don't love Susan, don't lead her on, stay away and just be siblings, but if you do love her, never let her down. Our whole family assumed that Levin and Susan would end up together, as it was clear to more than just me that Susan had feelings for Levin. In my sophomore year of college, I went to visit Susan at her school. Under the large banyan tree by her dormitory, Susan stood on her tiptoes, looking up, her thick, long eyelashes trembling lightly as she let Levin hold her head and kiss her. I was both excited and nervous at the time, thinking they had finally gotten together, but to my surprise, when I saw Susan again, she shook her head and said there was nothing between them. I couldn't help but go back and ask Levin, who was both resigned and speechless, are you blind? When did I ever kiss Susan? He slowly frowned and scoffed coldly. Susan was kissed. By whom? It was only later that I found out Levin had been drinking that day. Susan subtly probed the next day, and it turned out Levin had blacked out and didn't remember anything. Since then, Susan never mentioned that day again. Once, Levin brought a group of his college friends home. One of them was Sarah. Somehow, Sarah knew about Susan's background and made insinuations that Susan was no good. A truly pitiful person would have already found a way to solve their problems, not cry and throw themselves into others' arms, let alone cling to someone else's home, calling herself a sister while doing shameful things. Sarah seemed outspoken and naive, but in reality, she was full of cunning little tricks. Susan turned pale and sat there silently. I was just about to stand up in anger. Someone couldn't stand it anymore. The only quiet guy sitting in the corner spoke up, you are you. And she is her. Judging someone upon a first meeting, how good can you be? Sometimes speaking without thinking isn't being straightforward, it's being idiotic. Sarah blushed but didn't dare to retort. Yet, Levin, losing his temper, snorted, Frank, are you into Susan? Should I play matchmaker for you too? Susan stiffened suddenly, her slender back shrinking. She looked up at Levin, staring intently. But Levin was only glaring at Frank. It made me wonder. How could Levin become more spiteful as he got older, speaking without thinking and being unpleasant? I stood up, grabbed a beer, and wanted to pour it over his head to sober him up. However, Susan got up and left like a gracefully dancing butterfly, unnoticed by most except for a glance from Frank. After Susan left, Frank snorted and casually kicked a can on the floor, which, as if it had eyes, flew and hit Levin on the face. He stood up, disdainfully saying to Levin, that's all you're capable of. I must have misjudged you. Truly a match of petty men and foolish women. Levin was stunned, and by the time he reacted, Frank had already walked away. That night, Susan came home very late, and she didn't answer my calls. Since then, the relationship between Susan and Levin had turned icy. Everyone could see that Susan was avoiding Levin, until one night, Susan woke up from her sleep screaming and crying. When my parents and I rushed to her bedroom, Levin was kneeling by her bed, barefoot and without slippers, bending over to hold Susan tightly in his arms, soothing her gently and patiently. It's okay now, it's okay, don't be afraid, I'm here. I'll always be by your side. Susan gradually calmed down. Sobbing softly, she called out like a young kitten, Levin, brother Levin. Those of us outside the door exchanged glances and breathed a sigh of relief, our hearts finally settling down. After that, on an ordinary night, Susan, with a blushing face, shyly confessed her feelings for Levin to me. Nina, I think, I like Levin, what should I do? I laughed heartily, pinched her cheek, and encouraged her. Silly girl, if you like him, go for it. Also, you just realized you like him. She paused. And after a few seconds, pushed my head into her chest to stop me from seeing her expression. No, no, I mean I just started liking him now. I humored her a few times. Yes, yes, you just started liking him, haha. I initially thought Levin and Susan were mutually attracted to each other. Since Levin stepped back, if Susan stepped forward, they would naturally end up together. But that idiot Levin, seriously, what was he thinking, on such an important day as New Year's? He brought over some random person and spouted a bunch of nonsense, leaving everyone infuriated before he left. I regret not picking up a chair and smashing it on him at that moment. I took the chance to go to the restroom while Susan was talking with my mom. Just as I came out, I ran into Levin. He was leaning against the wall lazily, smoking a cigarette as if he had no bones. I didn't want to know why he was still here, nor did I even want to glance at him, but Levin grabbed me. His voice hoarse from smoking. Nina, where's Susan? I was infuriated by this lunatic, my anger flaring up instantly. What's it to you? Take your nasty girlfriend and get lost. Don't let me see you guys. Levin frowned, crushing his cigarette in the trash can. Sarah isn't my girlfriend. I laughed. Oh, she doesn't fancy you, huh? Interesting, Nina. Levin raised his voice in rebuke. I was about to continue mocking him when a voice came from behind me near the women's restroom. Levin. Buddy, how was my acting? Not to boast, but with this acting skill, if any director gave me a chance, I could win an Oscar for Best Actress. But your dear Susan, I don't think she even cares about you. I watched her the whole time, and she didn't even lift her head. Look, buddy, you might want to switch targets. After being pampered all her life, she goes and gives her first kiss to someone else. Man, you really are an unlucky brother. Sarah saw me just as she turned the corner. She suddenly froze, standing there awkwardly, then greeted me. Hey, little sister Nina, your brother really isn't my type. I really don't like him. Please don't get it wrong. I stepped forward, pushing her against the wall until she was backed against it. With a sneer, he said, So, Sarah, they say living people should keep their face like trees keep their bark. Where's your face in all this? Do you even know about my brother and Susan? Or are you just spreading rumors? What's this about Susan giving her first kiss to someone else? Explain yourself. Sarah suddenly pushed me and yelled at Levin. Dude, you were the one who asked me for this favor. Why am I the one being blamed in the end? After saying this, she shrugged at me and spread her hands helplessly. As for who got the first kiss, only the people involved would know. Why are you so anxious? I pushed her back fiercely and swung a slap at her, but someone intercepted it halfway, furious. I turned and glared daggers at Levin. Levin, with a tense face, told Sarah to leave. Thank you, you can go now. We'll be in touch if there's anything. Sarah gave me a challenging look, whistled a loud, melodious rogue's whistle, and turned to leave, saying Susan gave her first kiss to someone else feels even more humiliating than if someone had groped me. My eyes reddened and tears began to fall. Levin, didn't I tell you I saw you kissing Susan with my own eyes? Levin's face was cold as he pulled out his phone, scrolled through it, and showed me the screen. The man in the image was dressed in a basketball uniform and sneakers, his short hair obscuring his face, making it unclear. However, Susan's face was distinctly visible. I glanced at it, recalled the moment, and nodded. So, what, are you telling me that's not you? Levin looked down, his eyes cold. That day, after our basketball win, we went straight out to eat. I did drink. But no matter how drunk I wasn't unconscious. I never kissed Susan. That's Frank. He has the same outfit. I was utterly unreasonable. How could he not trust Susan? They grew up together, childhood sweethearts. True, Levin and Frank were quite similar in height and build, and the boys' short hairstyles were nearly identical. More than once, people have said that from behind, Levin and Frank looked almost like clones. But this involved Susan. It was impossible for her to let someone else kiss her. Levin's voice broke as he spoke, overwhelmed by emotion. Why should I take the blame for something I didn't do? Suddenly, there was a loud bang from behind. Turning around, Frank and Susan were standing right there. In Susan's dark, large eyes, shattered crystals seemed to nearly fall. Her pale face was a mix of helplessness and scorn. Her slender body suddenly leaned to one side, and Frank, standing close by, quickly grabbed her arm to steady her. This scene jolted Levin, causing his eyes to redden with emotion as he blurted out, in such a hurry, huh? There are rooms upstairs, do you want me to book one for you? Susan then spoke softly, her voice as thin as a wisp of smoke. Levin, you're right, the one who kissed me wasn't you, it was Frank. Frank paused for a second before gently closing his eyes and speaking in a deep, rich voice as if a violin was playing. Yes, it was me that day. He continued, looking at Levin, from now on, I'll take care of Susan, you and she have nothing to do with each other anymore. Frank bent down, scooped up the unsteady Susan without giving Levin or me another glance, and walked away. Levin, nearly grinding his teeth, yelled at their fading figures, Susan, come back down here. But no one paid him any attention. They left, and Levin was beside himself, like a lion that had lost its teeth, full of fury but unable to harm anyone. He collapsed on the sofa, repeatedly mumbling, since childhood, I've been the one by her side. When she was sad, I comforted her word by word. I couldn't even bring myself to touch her, and she let someone else kiss her. He couldn't continue, covered his face, and pulled at his hair. I couldn't bear to look at him and kicked him hard before I left. Idiot, you deserve the pain. Keep thinking that way. Susan moved out of the house. Frank found her a rental apartment and had everything arranged perfectly. My parents were both distressed and anxious, but Susan was stubborn and wouldn't budge an inch once she made up her mind. On the day Susan moved, Frank and I went to help her pack. She seemed really happy, her eyes curving into crescents, dangerously beautiful. We kept packing until the afternoon, leaving only a few small items. Susan stopped us, wrapping her arms around me. Let's go, Nina, I'll treat you both to a big meal. She slung her backpack over her shoulder and turned to ask Frank, hero of the day, what do you feel like eating? Today, the gentleman decides. Frank and Susan exchanged glances, then quickly looked away, their cheeks flushing a light red. You decide. I'll have whatever you're having, he said. They hadn't decided by the time we got downstairs. While crossing the street, Susan checked her phone briefly. When she looked up, her expression changed. Curiously, I glanced at her. Susan, what's wrong? Stomachache. Susan stared ahead, her expression suddenly brightening, and she shouted out, Mom. I was startled, and before I could react, I saw her suddenly dash forward. A loud crash followed by the screech of tires filled the air. I looked on as Susan's body was swept up like a leaf caught in the wind, gracefully arcing through the air before gently falling to the ground. The world fell silent in that moment. I saw Frank stumbling over, falling to his knees, bending over as he shouted something I couldn't make out. He looked back at me, his eyes bloodshot, his expression frantic and fierce. What was he saying? He was on his phone, looking around desperately, then stood up, bewildered and in pain. My body completely froze. I couldn't even step forward. I don't know how I ended up beside Susan. Blood was everywhere beneath her, her body twisted in a strange pose, her eyes wide open. Then, I knew nothing. When I came to, the smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. Lifting my eyes, I saw the pale cheeks and reddened eyes of my parents. My heart clenched, my lips trembled, and I was too afraid to speak. But then my dad, with his eyes closed, suddenly began to weep uncontrollably. Susan. In a car accident, dead on the scene. There weren't many people at Susan's funeral. We invited some of her close school friends. Frank and I stood together, heads bowed in silence, only occasionally looking up to stare off into the distance. I felt numb, unsure of what I was even doing. It was as if a piece of my heart was missing, the dense pain tearing at my nerves. I couldn't rest. Whenever I had a moment to myself, all I could think of was Susan. I didn't know how much pain she felt in those moments, what she was thinking. I checked my phone and scrolled through my social media, and suddenly I saw a post from Levin, time-stamped around the time we were crossing the street the day before. It was a photo of him with his college friends, all laughing, with Sarah jumping on his back, her mouth wide open in laughter, her hand poised to slap his backside. I stared at the photo, a weird, eerie silence settling over my heart. I knew Susan wouldn't have wanted to see Levin, not just her, none of our family wanted to see him. After the funeral, my parents knelt on the ground, crying until they passed out several times. They kept calling the names of Susan's parents, apologizing over and over, their pain and helplessness so profound. The funeral, like her life, was absurd and eerie. I didn't even get the chance to say goodbye. After the funeral, Susan became a handful of ashes, holding the box. It felt unbelievable. Such a beautiful, charming person, suddenly reduced to ashes in my arms. The wind at the beach was strong, and Frank followed silently behind me, his body angled as if to shield me from the wind. As the ashes slipped through my fingers, carried away by the sea breeze, I couldn't hold back any longer. Clenching my teeth, I burst into tears. Susan, Susan, take Nina with you. A week later, Levin came home. Seeing that I was the only one at home, he asked in confusion, "Where are Mom and Dad? Did they go to see Susan?" I looked down and spoke softly. "No, they left." Levin raised his eyebrows. "Where did they go? And what about Susan? Did that drama queen go with them?" I scoffed, feeling a pang of pain in my heart. "Susan is dead. You'll never see her again." Levin was about to curse when he suddenly changed his tone. "Who are you kidding? It'd be good if she really were dead. Just hope she doesn't come back to haunt us." I closed my eyes, tears silently falling. "Susan, this is the man you cared for. It's not worth it, truly not worth it." I got up, pushed the suitcase out, and gave Levin one last look. "Levin, you deserve to end up alone and miserable." My parents had moved into a temple, and the family business was handed over to someone else. All that was left for me was to leave Levin with a sliver of dignity by telling him the truth. Unfortunately, until the end, he had nothing good to say about Susan. Just as I stepped out the door, Levin rushed after me frantically. "Where are you going? Where exactly did Mom and Dad go? What about Susan? What's happening? Stop joking, don't scare me, please." By the end, he was truly scared. I smiled, feeling a burst of relief inside. "Susan died in a car accident, just as you were posting on social media. She was thrown 5 meters away from the impact, died instantly." Levin's legs gave way. He choked up, disbelievingly asking me, "How can you curse Susan like that? Are you insane?" "Shut up." I had no words left, just turned and walked away. Levin was frantic, grabbing my sleeve, breaking down. "Nina, what's really going on? Don't leave. Where are you going? Where is Susan? Take me to her. Where is she?" I led Levin to the seaside. Sarah was also there, idly sitting on a bollard swinging her legs. Upon seeing us, she jumped down and teasingly asked Levin, "What, big boy called Daddy over for what?" "Missed Daddy." After a few minutes, Levin didn't respond but turned to ask me, "What do you mean, where is Susan?" I pointed towards the ocean and spoke softly, "Right here." I personally scattered her ashes into the sea. "Speak to her, she might hear you." Levin collapsed. Nina yelled at me, "Can you please talk properly? Stop lying to me, for God's sake, and tell me where Susan is." Sarah stood rigidly, kicking a stone on the ground, and suddenly said lazily, "Why can't the dead ever leave us in peace? Such a cursed family." Levin suddenly turned around, his eyes bloodshot, and in a fit of rage, kicked Sarah in the stomach. Sarah slid back a meter with a ripping sound. Dazed, she looked up at Levin and said, "What the hell is wrong with you, Levin? Isn't it true, she was always causing trouble, kissing Frank while flirting with you, playing innocent while pretending to be strong?" I couldn't listen anymore. I walked over and kicked her behind the knee. Sarah fell to her knees. I grabbed her neck and slammed her head forward repeatedly until I saw red. Then I stopped. "Shut up about your nonsense. You tarnished her reputation, and now you owe Susan an apology. Otherwise, she'll be at your bedside tonight to claim your life." Sarah's face went pale, blood from her forehead trickling down her cheeks and into her collar. After hearing what I said, she widened her eyes in terror, her body shaking like a sieve. "No, what does this have to do with me? That photo was just a random shot." "Really?" Levin was suddenly stunned. Then he lunged forward, knelt down, grabbed Sarah's collar, and shook her violently. "What do you mean? Didn't you say you took the photo clearly, and it was Frank?" Sarah shook her head, tears flying. "Can you even tell who was who? Besides, I was drunk that day too. You don't remember?" "And neither do I." Levin was instantly dumbfounded, falling into a long, deadly silence. After a while, he suddenly scoffed, then burst into uncontrollable laughter, tears streaming down his face as he laughed hysterically, his eyes red and frightening as he glared at Sarah. "Are you kidding me? Are you playing games with me? Do you have any idea how important Susan was to me?" He slammed Sarah's head against a rock. Not satisfied, he kept twisting it back and forth. Sarah screamed desperately, "Help! Levin has lost it. Someone save me. This is going to end in death. I'm calling the police." I stood by the seaside, arms outstretched, eyes closed, feeling the wind, The breeze by my ear felt like Susan's gentle touch sweeping across my face. Susan, maybe now you are truly free and happy. Susan, in the next life, let me be your other half, protecting you forever. Goodbye, Susan. Nina loves you very much. Nina likes Susan the best. Nina wants to be with Susan forever. When I opened my eyes again, Frank was standing not far away, watching everything coldly, ignoring the two who were losing their minds. I bid farewell to Frank and left. Levin had been waiting outside the house Susan rented for 2 days and nights. Sadly, no one ever came to open the door for him again. He couldn't believe that Susan was dead, just as he couldn't believe that it was he who had kissed Susan under the banyan tree that day. Yet in his memories, he didn't even dare to hug her too tightly. What did that kiss feel like? Even imagining it made his heart race as if it was his first kiss. But why couldn't he remember it? After 2 days, Levin was disheveled, with red-rimmed eyes, muttering repetitively, Susan, at least let me see you one last time. I'm sorry, so sorry, Susan. Unfortunately, no one responded to him. Last night, trapped in his memories, he slapped himself in a frenzy while sobbing bitterly. When he finally calmed down, he closed his eyes and suddenly fell asleep. About half an hour later, he opened his eyes again and remembered nothing, not even Susan's shadow. Why won't you appear in my dreams, please? Just let me see you once. Levin couldn't understand it, and began frantically searching online for ways to summon spirits. He thought about going to a temple to pray to Buddha to let him see Susan one last time. His phone kept ringing until it ran out of battery, plunged into darkness. He felt agonizing heartache until dawn when he suddenly heard the elevator. Startled, he got up and ran towards it. As the elevator doors opened, Frank appeared in his line of sight, the light in Levin's eyes extinguished. Frank paused, gave him a cold look, then walked past him. Levin watched as he approached Susan's door. He rushed over crazily, grabbing Frank's arm. How do you have the keys to Susan's place? Susan isn't dead, right? She's at home, isn't she? Open the door, quickly. Frank paused what he was doing, shook off Levin's hand sharply, and said coldly, Levin, it's time to wake up from this dream. Susan is no longer here. Please respect our final agreement. Whether alive or dead, Susan has nothing to do with you anymore. With just those words, Levin was stunned, leaning against the wall. He collapsed to the ground, slowly bringing his hands to his head, then began to violently hit himself. Tears and snot flowed down his face. Frank did not spare Levin another glance, but took the opportunity to open the door and enter. The house was still clean, just as the three of them had left it. Susan's curved eyebrows and eyes seemed close at hand. He smiled slightly, and then spoke to the air. Susan, I'm going into your bedroom now. Don't be mad. After saying that, he blinked, pushed the door open, and picked up the pink leopard plush from the bed. He raised his hand to touch his head. At this proximity, it seemed he could smell the scent of Susan still lingering on the Pink Panther plushie, an odd, yet delightful aroma. It wasn't perfume, more like a natural body scent, light and soft, mixed with the sweetness of candy. His earlobes reddened almost instantly, turning a deep crimson as if a drop of blood, giving his face an unusually enchanting allure. He hugged the Pink Panther tightly, then suddenly feeling too close, he quickly grabbed a shopping bag and stuffed the plushie inside. He stood in the living room for a long time, his gaze sweeping over the space inch by inch, before finally picking up a solo photo that hadn't yet been moved to the bedroom and walked out the door. Upon opening the door, Levin was still sitting at the entrance, his hair a mess, barely resembling a human. Frank closed and locked the door. Levin suddenly stood up, gripping Frank's arm tightly. Please tell me, was it you who kissed her that day? Unable to tolerate any more, Frank kicked him into the corner and walked away. Just as he reached the elevator, Levin chased after him, pulling the Pink Panther out of the bag. This is Susan's Pink Panther, the toy that has been with her since birth, the one she must hold while she sleeps at night. After her uncle and aunt left, only the Pink Panther stayed by her side. His lips quivered as he spoke, clutching the Pink Panther and walking towards the window. Susan, I'm here to be with you. Are you cold? Brother Levin is here to find you. Susan, are you in pain? My heart hurts so much. What should I do to atone? Susan, I can't remember. Did we kiss? Frank, who had been watching coldly, suddenly stared in horror and screamed, Susan. His voice was desperate and panicked. Levin froze, already on the windowsill. He had been holding the Pink Panther tightly, but suddenly, Strangely, it slipped from his grasp onto the floor. He turned to look blankly at Frank. Frank rushed over, grabbed the Pink Panther, and without another glance at Levin, fled from his sight. Levin took a long moment to recover before numbly stepping down. He blinked slowly, puzzled by why Frank had suddenly shouted, "Susan, could it be?" He looked around immediately, scanning the roof corners and the empty corridor, but there was nothing. Story from Susan's perspective. As I got into the car with Frank, I noticed his expression was still filled with panic. His face was tense, and even with his eyes closed, I could see his eyelids quivering. He sat in the driver's seat for a while before finally starting the car, his hands still trembling. I had a thought, unsure if it was appropriate to voice it. Speaking softly, I asked, "Frank, you can see me, right?" His eyebrows twitched slightly and his hands paused for a second, yet, he pretended he hadn't heard anything and continued driving normally onto the street. I leaned closer to his shoulder, gently blowing in his ear, softening my tone. "Frank, your fingers are really beautiful." His earlobes flushed uncontrollably, and his fingers tensed unnaturally. At that moment, I was certain he could see me. Realizing he couldn't hide it anymore, he spoke in a hoarse voice to stop my actions. "Susan, move over there a bit. What can he sense about me? A ghost? And still he's so prudish and delicate. Move over a bit." I drifted over, overshooting my mark, floating out of the car. Frank couldn't handle it, urgently calling out, "Susan," and abruptly stopping by the roadside. Looking back at the traffic, I hurriedly floated back to calm his nerves. All right, pay attention to the road and drive safely." For the first time since I became a ghost, Frank looked me straight in the eye. His eyes were red and watery, and with a choked voice, he softly said, "I'm scared. Please don't tease me, okay?" I paused for a moment, then asked him, "So when I went to get the Pink Panther, you didn't think I was going to save Levin, did you? Were you afraid I'd jump off the building with him?" He glanced at me, silent. That was his tacit agreement. It figures. But, how could it be? Levin is completely out of the picture for me now. The day I died, my bipolar disorder flared up. Nina and Frank were tidying up the house, and I tried desperately to control myself, but still ended up speaking too much. I couldn't control my expressions. Actually, right after my parents left, Levin had taken me to the hospital. After a series of tests, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. The doctor prescribed some medication and instructed my family to watch for any psychological changes and to bring me back for a follow-up at any time. I recovered quite well after that, thanks to Levin's meticulous care and the personal attention from Nina and my godparents. For a while, I thought I could start over, but it didn't work. The deep-seated fears in my dreams at night caused me emotional breakdowns time and again. Until my first year of high school, the mental torment led me to secretly go for a checkup without my family knowing. Unfortunately, the doctor told me that I likely had bipolar disorder, until my most beloved Levin kissed me one night. I thought that was a confirmation of our relationship. I thought he would always be my salvation, but it turned out he was drunk and didn't remember. Not remembering was one thing, but then he said that the person who kissed me that night was Frank. That was something I couldn't tolerate or forgive. Levin changed, becoming someone I didn't recognize. He held someone else's hand. "You mock me, you provoke me. You pushed me towards others with your own hands." That day, as Nina, Frank, and I were coming down from the building, I stood by the roadside waiting for the traffic light. I took out my phone and scrolled through my social feed, only to stumble upon a photo just posted by Levin. I remembered back when I was a child, shortly after my mother passed away. Levin was so concerned about me getting tired even from crossing the street that he'd carry me on his back, charging forward, shouting as he ran, "I'm Susan's little pony. Wherever Susan tells me to go, I'll go. I'm always Susan's guardian angel." Levin will always protect Susan. Seeing Sarah laughing unrestrainedly on his back broke my heart. It felt like a giant hand was tightly squeezing my heart, leaving me gasping for air. As I looked up bewildered, I suddenly saw my mother standing in the road, still young and beautiful, her stylishly curled hair and gentle, affectionate smile as she beckoned me over. "Susan, come to mommy. Quick, mommy misses you so much." My heart raced, and without hesitation, I ran towards her. "Mom, I'm coming to you." As my body soared through the air, I felt free. My heart was calm, until I hit the ground. My soul left my body and floated mid-air, where I saw Frank rushing over in a panic. Nina stood far away, her expression one of shock and even fear, rooted to the spot, her mouth agape, unable to shout, tears streaming down unknowingly. Frank was calling the police, dialing for emergency services, completely losing control. This wasn't the Frank I knew. He had always been sober and restrained, never losing his temper or showing anger. He was Levin's brother, always silently following whenever Levin came to pick me up, never saying much to me, until the misunderstanding where Levin thought I had kissed him, and suddenly, Frank and Levin had a fallout. The disdain and contempt he had for Levin were written all over his face. Frank knelt on the ground, gently brushing the hair from my bloodied cheek. His arm trembling fiercely, he looked up blankly into the sky, tears gently sliding down his cheeks. His gaze paused momentarily on me, then shifted away. I also found it strange. Why, after dying, was I not taken away by the spirits of the afterlife, but instead became a lonely soul left in the mortal world? And why was I bound to stay by Frank's side, having to follow wherever he went, after my funeral? Frank drove home alone. He sat on the floor, curled up, slightly dazed. After a moment, suddenly clutching his chest, his eyebrows furrowed, he let out a low groan. I watched him curiously, slightly anxious. What was wrong with him? Was he feeling unwell? Until I saw him take out his phone and leave a comment on a video by an emergency doctor. Doctor, it was a car accident. I lost my girlfriend. Does she know the pain she's in? Could you please tell me the truth? Thank you. I was left speechless, suspended in midair. Even though he was dead, I could still feel the pain in my heart. Soon after, someone replied to his comment, "It doesn't hurt. When a person suffers a severe injury, the body releases a lot of adrenaline. You feel like your brain goes blank and your body feels light." Suddenly, Frank lost control, crying like a wolf cub, his face buried in his hands as he sobbed. I floated down, curled my lips slightly, and gently embraced him, sighing softly, "Silly boy. It doesn't hurt, not one bit." His bent back suddenly stiffened, then slowly straightened as he tried to turn his face towards me, only to stop midway. It turned out he could always see me. Frank drove in silence the whole way, bored. I floated on the car's hood, counting vehicles, unable to bear it any longer. Frank softly scolded, "Susan, come inside." I swiftly floated back and asked, "What's wrong? You're not talking, and you won't let me have any fun." He glanced at me, sighed helplessly, and asked, "What would you like? Should I sing? Tell a story?" My eyes lit up. "Really? Both? Then sing first, and tell a story after." "Okay." Frank chuckled softly, agreeing. His ethereal, deep voice slowly filled the car. "If at 18, I couldn't give you flowers, then by 28, let me take you out for a drink. We'll drink until we speak of love, and that would be a life without regrets." I blinked. If I had a heartbeat, it surely would have raced, but following that, came a wave of sadness and endless regrets. After the song, silence fell in the car. I quickly responded, "Beautiful, really beautiful, super beautiful." Frank's ears turned red as he coughed lightly and turned to ask me, "Shall I sing to you every day?" I looked around and gently nodded, "Yes, but you have to keep your promise." We arrived at our destination, and he parked and got out of the car. I floated behind him. He asked me, "Shall I tell you a story then?" I agreed. As the elevator stopped and two people walked out, Frank just began. "Back then, I was just in my first year of high school." The two people looked at Frank standing alone, talking to thin air. They exchanged glances, trying to remain calm. But as soon as they exited the elevator, they sprinted away. I laughed wildly inside the elevator, and Frank, looking helpless, said, "Susan, stop it, come down. You make me want to see where exactly you are, and you might make the security think I'm crazy." I kept laughing. He teased me as he floated beside me. "So by speaking so mysteriously, do you think others won't misunderstand you?" He stared into my eyes and shook his head. "Then let's not worry about others. Let them think what they want." When the elevator arrived, he casually reached around my back, but his hand just passed through my body. I was stunned for just a second before he walked out as if nothing happened. However, I couldn't miss the look of disappointment and loneliness in his eyes. After Frank returned, he said he needed to take a shower first. Bored, I teased him to tell me a story while he showered so I wouldn't be delayed. Wearing a bathrobe and with muscles taut on his calves, he walked past me with his head slightly lowered. "I'm worried you won't hear me. I'll tell you after I'm done," I threatened him. "If you don't tell it, I'm coming in." Frank, resigned, quickly closed the bathroom door with a snap. "All right, I'll talk while I shower." The sound of the water was loud, but his voice was low, yet I could still hear him clearly. He said, "In my first year of high school, my brother brought his sister to the classroom. She was very pretty, with a ponytail and a slender neck like a swan, beautiful and noble. His sister seemed very aloof, with a cold look in her eyes. Only when she was startled did her inner fear show. She'd panic, become confused, and it was very heartbreaking to me. I noticed my brother had a very strong possessiveness over his so-called sister, almost to the point of being abnormally controlling and invasive. In my final year of high school, when his sister came to the classroom looking for him, a girl who had sent him a love letter spoke loudly right next to his sister, scaring her. I can't forget that look of panic, confusion, and even fear. The girl laughed loudly while she crouched under the desk, trembling. I couldn't stand it any longer and confronted the girl, but when he came back and saw his sister crying, without understanding the situation, he punched me and sternly warned me to stay away from his sister. I know his sister liked to touch fabrics. Probably preferred touching fluffy things more. She would play with the fabric unconsciously, constantly fiddling with it. She also liked to kick stones while walking, chasing after one. Once, when we were going to eat together, she was kicking a stone and nearly got hit by a car. I pulled her back, but she thought it was her brother who had pulled her back, and she turned and smiled at him. He and I were quite fated, continuing to be classmates in university. His sister was well protected by him, and accordingly, no boys dared to approach her, until one day, after a basketball game which we won, someone suggested going out to eat and have a few drinks. He drank quickly, and his eyes started to look different. I followed him and saw him looking for her, saw them kissing under the banyan tree. I don't know what I was feeling, but at that moment, she must have been very happy. But then, everything went out of control. He blacked out, not remembering anything he had done. Even worse, someone took the opportunity to take photos, creating a series of misunderstandings. "It was me who kissed her," he said. I was angry and heartbroken, but there was nothing I could do about it. Listening to his sorrowful tone, I found myself drifting in front of him. It all came back to me, everything remembered. Looking into his dark, glossy eyes, I softly asked him, "Why do you feel this pain? What exactly hurts?" Frank's eyes, dark and shiny, instantly reddened, his voice choked up and husky, filling the cramped space with boundless sorrow. "It pains me to see her slandered, violated, distrusted by the one she loves the most, to see her watch the love of her life being intimate with someone else." Feeling helpless and heartbroken, I blinked, wanting to cry. Gently, I lifted my hand to touch his profound eyes, his sharp features, and his reddened lips. How I wished I could hug him. "Frank, it's such a pity. Only after I died did I truly get to know you, to see the real you. I'm sorry." He shook his head, embracing me lightly. "I am grateful that within my lifetime, I could express these feelings to you. It's not a pity, not at all. I can still see you, still talk to you. It's worth it, truly worth it." Frank's side story. I had been searching for Sarah for quite some time, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. It was only later, when I reached out to some college friends, that they revealed the situation over the phone. Sarah's parents had divorced and each had started new families. Sarah herself wasn't focusing on her career and, being short on cash, ended up with a 60-year-old man. This arrangement came to an abrupt end when his young, newly official wife found out and gave Sarah a harsh beating. With no money, a tarnished reputation, and few job prospects, Sarah turned to bartending, which paid quickly. However, she was eventually dragged into unsavory activities by manipulative individuals, and although she adapted well, envy led others to set her up, resulting in her losing 2 fingers. Now, she's nowhere to be found, and some say it might be divine retribution. It wasn't until a college reunion that I learned all of this was orchestrated by someone named Levin. I glanced around me, fingers clenched, when a delicate, slender hand gently touched mine. I looked down and managed a slight smile. As the drinks flowed, the conversation turned back to Levin, and someone continued sharing his latest plight. "The guy's lost it, always seeking monks to perform soul-summoning rituals, wishing for one last glimpse of Susan. Sadly, fate isn't on his side." As he spoke, his glass suddenly shattered, startling everyone. Unfazed, he grabbed another glass and continued, "Eventually, He had no choice but to become a monk, living on prayers and hoping to meet Susan, though it looks unlikely. Poor fellow, his glass broke again, this time cutting his hand. He stiffened for a moment, wiped his face, and cursed softly. Damn, I wasn't even pressing hard. That's enough, no more talking. For some reason, Susan's spirit hadn't been taken by the arbiters of the afterlife and just kept following me day after day, wherever I went. She had to follow. Over time, it became distressing. Why was this happening? Could it hinder her reincarnation? Would her soul disperse suddenly one day? Once, during a business trip, as we were crossing the street, a girl nearby was hit by an out-of-control car and sent flying. My heart clenched tightly, pulling a deeply buried memory to the surface. Seeing my distress, Susan floated beside me, trying to comfort me. Frank, it's okay, don't be scared. I'm still here. Why? Her words were abruptly cut off by a scream, and her spirit vanished in an instant. My heart raced, and I trembled uncontrollably, looking around bewildered. Susan was gone. The girl lying on the ground not far ahead was limp. I rushed over, knelt down, and brushed the hair from her face. To my astonishment, she bore an exact resemblance to Susan, with a beautiful, pale face. I thought I was hallucinating, so I closed my eyes tightly and then opened them again. But everything remained the same. Suddenly, someone pushed me aside and shouted loudly, "Call the police, call an ambulance, please don't scare mommy, can you hear mommy talking?" The girl's eyelashes fluttered slightly. The next moment, she slowly opened her eyes. She looked at the lady in front of her with unfamiliar eyes, then her gaze gently fell on me. She opened her mouth, and in a soft, husky voice, like a wisp of blue smoke, she said, "Frank." I was speechless. Crawling next to her on all fours, "Sue, I'm here. Are you okay? What hurts? I'll take you to the hospital." She reached out her hand to me, placing it in my palm, her eyes and eyebrows curving into a smile. "Okay, take me to the hospital." Susan, her soul had attached itself to a deceased spirit and survived. She gained loving parents, and me. I moved our family from the original city to here. On the day of our engagement, I drove a convertible to take her to the hotel. While waiting for the light at an intersection, Susan couldn't stay still, waving her arms around, wanting to sing to me. I teased her about her tone deafness, yet she still showed off. She playfully wrapped her hands around my neck, pretending to choke me, baring her teeth and grinning. "Frank, how dare you dislike me?" I took the opportunity to nod and kissed the corner of her mouth, my fingers caressing her eyes and brows as I hummed, "I don't dislike you, I love you." My gaze shifted unintentionally and spotted a familiar face. Nina stood still on the sidewalk, watching us for who knows how long. As the light turned green and the car started to move, she slowly shed tears, her lips curling into a clear, bright smile. She waved silently, saying goodbye, "Goodbye, I wish you happiness."